So with the draft behind us in the new year right around the corner, exactly how have the Rams worn their crown as Super Bowl champs?
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Rams your first listen every day, your team every single day. My name is Travis Rogers. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter as well. I also not only am your host of Locked On Rams, but I also host the Rams pregame and postgame show on their flagship station, ESPN 710. Also the host of the Travis and Sliwa Show, which you can hear 10 a.m. every West Coast morning on our flagship station, ESPN 710 in Los Angeles. Okay, we got a good one for you. A couple of different things. I think there might be some good news on Odell Beckham Jr. Got to read some of the tea leaves along the way, but I think they're mostly positive. That's coming up in just a little bit. And the Rams had Steven Jackson make one of their draft choices. I have some thoughts on that. I have some general thoughts on using celebrities, former players to make some of the draft picks. I like the idea, but the execution is lacking a little bit, shall we say. That's all coming up later on. Make sure you click that subscribe button on your podcast feed. Make sure that you check us out on YouTube as well. Your Locked On Rams YouTube channel is a place that you got to see, and I'll have my my cool Locked On t-shirt today, right? How about that? Check that out. So you can see that if you check out the Locked On Rams YouTube page as well. Okay, so let's jump right into this. The Rams are Super Bowl champs. We know this. It's been a few months since they grabbed the Lombardi Trophy away from the Cincinnati Bengals on that unbelievable drive towards the end of the fourth quarter, and then Aaron Donald doing what he does at the end of the game. And a couple of very big NFL kind of milestones along the way have gone by. And now really with the draft in the rearview mirror, with free agency mostly done, we're getting ready for the new season, and you're going to have mini camps opening up before too long, and you're going to turn around. It's going to be 100 degrees. It's going to be in the middle of the summer, and we're going to have training camps open for the Rams at UCI and getting ready to become the defending Super Bowl champions. And that is certainly not nothing. It's something that they haven't had to do for the better part of 20 years along the way, and it's really the first time they've had to do it since they came back to Los Angeles, or the first time since they've been in Los Angeles, whether it was the first time through or the second time through. So it's going to be a little bit different. So here's the question I was thinking about. How have they worn their Super Bowl crown? Because, it's once the afterglow, if you will, of winning the Super Bowl starts to wear off, you start to think, okay, what's next? This is what makes sports so awesome, and this is what makes them kind of frustrating too, is that you are as good as your last game. And then once the next game comes, what happened before that really doesn't matter much at all. Now, certainly a grace period comes along with winning a championship the way that the Rams have, but how have they handled being the Super Bowl champs in there? What have we seen from the organization, from the team in the days, weeks, and months since they won the Super Bowl back in February? I think we've seen some really good things. I think we've seen a lot of very positive indicators from this group, because an organization can go one of two ways. I know everybody thinks, okay, we finally won one. Now let's go see if we can get another one and build a dynasty and start stacking these things up and become a team that is involved in something like this year after year after year. That's what you would think would be the goal, right? Not necessarily. Sometimes you're going to see some teams that win a championship, that they start to sell off players, that they start to, okay, we got the one, now we got to start to tear it down to rebuild and get another, or even worse, let's start to tear it down so we can maximize some of these assets, and we're gonna coast on some of the goodwill that was created from a championship season, or maybe even just a championship run, right? And you think about what the Rams did in Super Bowl 53 a few years ago. The season after that was not particularly successful, but not because they didn't double down and try to win some games. It just didn't go their way, right? That's just kind of the way that it goes. But fast forward a couple of years after that, and here we are as the defending Super Bowl champions. So how have they worn the crown? They've been incredibly active in the free agent market. There are Bobby Wagner, one of the biggest free agent names available on the free agent market. They went out and picked up arguably the best middle linebacker that was on the market. They go out and get Allen Robinson, who I believe is going to have a massive season for the Rams. They add yet another offensive weapon to a team that was pretty flush with offensive weapons along the way. They re-signed some of their key free agents of their own, guys like Joe Noteboom, guys like Brian Allen along the way. They drafted according to need in the draft last week. We're talking about a ton of defensive backs. We're talking about some offensive line help along the way. They have replenished the brain drain, if you will, from their staff. You know how it happens every single year. You win a Super Bowl, you get close to it, especially if you're a member of Sean McVay's staff. Some guys start to leave. Some guys get some opportunities. Looking at Minnesota right now, these are the opportunities that come along with the championship team. You got to replace some players there. There have been no indicators that the Rams are going to, you know what, let's just sit this out and let's see what happens. They've continued to operate more or less the way that they've operated in a football sense, going back the last few years under Sean McVay and Les Snead. They've been very aggressive. They have been very tactical in how they use their draft picks. They've been very tactical in how which free agents that they go about. We'll see what they look like come trade deadline again, once the season comes around. Again, the Rams are one of the few teams in the NFL that actually make trades that I think are impactful in a meaningful way. You know, it's much more like a baseball team or a basketball team that makes a trade at the deadline. The NFL teams don't really do that. The Rams have. I think you could probably expect to see more of that moving forward if they see an opportunity there. So from a football perspective, winning the championship hasn't given them any sort of pause. Like, oh, let's just wait and see what happens. Let's roll it back. Let's just do it all over again. Let's just bring back the same core guys. And if a free agent goes here and somebody that signs there and a guy retires like Andrew Whitworth, we're just going to try to replace from in-house and not really do it. That's not how they've been. They've been incredibly active along the way. So that's the football perspective of it. Here's the other part that I think is really interesting. You know how when you get a little good at something, and it could be anything, right? Like it really does. Maybe you play an instrument, maybe you cook, maybe you are golf or whatever it is, whatever you do, and you're doing it for a while and you're okay at it. But all of a sudden you figure out, you know what? I'm pretty good at this. I've figured out a way to do this. I know how to make this dish. I know how to play this song. I know how to hit this shot on a golf course, right? And you just kind of have a little something, a little bounce, a little thing, a little confidence, a little swag, whatever you want to call it, and it kind of comes off in a likable sort of way, in a powerful sort of way, in a way that allows you to maybe try some things that maybe you wouldn't have before, just because your confidence is sky high, right? Um, That's what the Rams feel like a lot to me over the last couple of weeks along the way. Just looking at Sean McVay and Les Snead in the draft when the Patriots made that pick, right? And they, oh my gosh, they got our guy. The idea that they were laughing at the Patriots, I'll never buy that. Never. They were laughing at the fact that the Patriots were on the same small school guy from Chattanooga that they were. That's what they were laughing at. Like, we thought we had a chance at 104. The Patriots took them in the first round. Like, hey, how smart are we? They were all over it too. But you see moments like that bred out of nothing but confidence. You don't think that Jeff Fisher was going to do something like that. You don't think that some guys that are just getting started in their careers are doing something like that. And then throw that video on top of it. They're feeling it. They're feeling good. And it's attractive. And it's something that other people are going to want to be a part of. I love how they've handled their post Super Bowl, and they've got a few more weeks. They've got mini camp coming up, and you're going to go through training camp in the summer. And like I mentioned, the season's going to start. And once that opening game of the season starts, and it's presumed that the Rams will be in it, we'll get the schedule here hopefully at some point next week, and we can start breaking that stuff down on Locked On Rams. Rams are going to open up the season as the defending Super Bowl champs. That's how it works. And then we're going to be talking about that team. You know, we'll always reference the previous season, but I'm incredibly bullish on how they've worn the weight of a championship along there, because it can bring a lot of negativity. It can bring a lot of passivity. And the Rams really haven't experienced much of that at all. So congratulations to them for doing what they're doing. All right, coming up next, I want to mention, I should say, we saw it during the draft. Steven Jackson helped the Rams make one of their draft selections, and his was fine. But I have a couple of suggestions for the Rams along the way, and I have a couple of suggestions for the NFL on what not to do with bringing some former players, celebrities, whatnot, to the draft along the way. That's coming up next. But first, let's talk about our pals at BetOnline. I've been telling you want to think about what the Angels are up to. There's just some baseball futures along the way. They got some pitching. They got their best players. I know Ohtani's down. I'm just saying, these are all of the things that you can go look at the odds, look at the numbers, how they're changing. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your sports betting information and stats. Find all the latest developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball, like I mentioned, and this weekend's Run to the Roses as the Kentucky Derby is back. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Okay, so the draft obviously is mostly about which players you draft in which spot, and did you draft for need? Did you go best available? All the draft chatter that you hear, this, that, this, there, and everywhere. I want to talk about something that maybe isn't talked about nearly as much, and these are kind of the celebrity camos that you will see coming out. And for instance, Emmitt Smith delivers a pick for the Dallas Cowboys. Sure, why not? Emmitt Smith is a Hall of Famer. Emmitt Smith is one of the great Cowboys of all time. He's the NFL's all-time leading rusher. All of these things. Cool. Makes sense, right? Problem is that Emmitt Smith called it the 2020 NFL draft. Not the end of the world, just kind of a slip of the tongue, I'm assuming. But can we at least make sure that we have the year right? There was a guy from the Minnesota Vikings who was a former actor, Ed Molinaro, who was an actor on Hill Street Blues back in the 80s a million years ago, and also played for the Vikings before that in the 70s. Okay, cool. Actor, kind of got his, he knows how to have a little stage presence along the way. He knows how to go out there and say with the, whatever it is, the 158th pick in the draft, the Minnesota Vikings select, blah, 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 blah. Except for he went up there and just started rambling and talking about when he got drafted in sports coats. And it was a very, very weird moment. So let's make sure we prep these guys up that what year it is. And we do not need your stream of consciousness recollection of what it was like 50 years ago when you got drafted. Just wave, say, hey, everybody, remember me? Probably not. And then just take the pick and go on and collect whatever gift bag the NFL gave you for showing up. It's cool. Let's talk a little bit about what the Rams did with this. They brought out Steven Jackson. Now, Steven Jackson has a pretty good reputation of this because Steven Jackson was the guy that announced the Cooper Kupp pick a couple of years ago. So I really like seeing S-Jack back because he is a fantastic football player. He was a great St. Louis Ram along the way. He's had good luck selecting some of these picks in the later rounds. So I'm 100% okay with Steven Jackson as a guy that they go back to help announce these picks. I do, however, have a suggestion for the Rams. I do, however, have a specific suggestion for the Rams now. And I get that it's a little bit complex. I get that there are some moving parts in this because you don't want to abandon the history that you have. The Rams are the Rams, whether they were in Los Angeles and then they're St. Louis and now they're back here in Los Angeles again. The team's history is the team's history, regardless of whatever municipality they might be playing in at the time. However, one of the things that I think this team really needs to focus on, and they're doing a good job of it, but can we find some LA Rams? Can even if they're relatively recent history LA Rams, or if you want to go back, if you want to throw an Eric Dickerson in there, a Jackie Slater in there, a Jack Youngblood, some LA Rams along the way. Steven Jackson, I'm 100% okay with it because of I'm a little bit superstitious, and if you make a good pick one year, let's roll it back another year. I'm fine with that. But when I think of Steven Jackson, I think of the St. Louis Rams. You're trying to create an identity as the Los Angeles Rams. Let's roll Andrew Whitworth out there. Let's have him do it. I know that we have some celebrities that have done these things along the way. I mean, let's go big there. Let's find some guys that are here in town that have identified with the Rams, and let's put them up there. Or let's at least pick some Rams that have some history with this city and this team. And I know it's look, we're coming into year 7 here coming up since the Rams have come back to Los Angeles. And, a lot of the guys that are still playing or they're on other teams, or maybe they don't quite connect to the city. Like there's no question about it that, fast forward 15 years from now, when Aaron Donald comes out and says with the, 10th pick in the, what would that be 15 years from now, the 2037 NFL draft, the Los Angeles Rams select Aaron Donald Jr., or the second or third, or whatever version of Aaron Donald will be on at that point. That's great because he's an LA Ram. Matthew Stafford can show up and do that. Jared Goff could show up and do that, believe it. I mean, there are going to be options further down the line, but it just, when I see that, when you see Orlando Pace, when you see Kurt Warner, Marshall Faulk, these guys are Torrey Holt. These guys are great players, and a part of the Rams' history to be sure. And I appreciate everything that they've done. I've gotten to talk to Marshall. I've gotten to talk to Torrey Holt. They're good guys and unbelievable football players, Hall of Fame football players. But I really do think it's important that you start to develop an identity of the Los Angeles Rams. We are here. We are about the guys that played here, not necessarily just as Rams, but as Los Angeles Rams. And if we got to peel that back a little bit, if you got to go back to the 70s and 80s and the early part of the 90s, and then even as far back recently as 2016, let's do that. Let's find some of those guys. I think you can sprinkle in some of those other Hall of Famers along the way, but those guys are saying, in my mind, and again, I'm old enough to have grown up as a Rams fan in the 70s and 80s and the early 90s here, and we're rooting for those teams, and I remember those players, but you got a whole new group of guys that right now are maybe 10, 12, 15, 16 years old that are trying to figure out which of these teams are going to be their favorite teams, and the Rams have checked every box there is. They're good. They have cool uniforms. They're in a great stadium. They're in a great location. All of those things. They've got star players. Let's give them more of the city. Let's give them more of the history of this particular team in this particular city. I'd love to see them do that. Steven Jackson, if you keep picking guys like Cooper Kupp, you get a special dispensation moving forward, but I'd love to see some LA guys in that role moving forward, in addition to some of those great St. Louis Rams along the way. So good job to them on that. And who knows, maybe they found, maybe the lineman from Wisconsin will turn out to be the next version of Cooper Kupp. If you can be an offensive guard and be a version of Cooper Kupp, I'm all for that. So we'll see how that shakes out. All right, coming up next, I want to talk about reading some more of these tea leaves on Odell Beckham Jr. And we talked about how some of them maybe not be pointing the Rams directions. I found some that say, you know what, maybe you want to keep that little spot on the roster for OBJ open just a little bit longer. That's coming up next. Are you a do-it-yourselfer? Do you like to work on your own car? Do you like to make sure that you're saving time and money when you're doing those sorts of things? Is there anybody that doesn't want to save time and money? I don't think so. I think everybody likes saving time and money. The point of this is you're going to save time and money when you use Rock Auto. You're going to save 30%, 50%, even 100% for some of the same parts from a chain store or a dealership. And you're thinking, nah, come on, man. How about this? $353 for a Honda Odyssey fuel pump from a chain store. $216 from Rock Auto. I don't know, $114 less sounds a lot, or $140, excuse me, a lot less sounds like a good idea to me. And it's a family business. They've been serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. They always have reliably low prices for every single one of their customers. And they got what you need too. Sometimes maybe you bounced around, you've gone to this place or that place, and they don't have exactly what you need. They're going to have what you need at Rock Auto. Here's what you do. You go to rockauto.com right now. You see all the parts available for your car or truck, and then you write Locked On in there. How did you hear about us box? So they know that we sent you over there. That's good for you. That's good for us. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. Thanks again for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single day. My name is Travis Rogers. Thanks for checking out the pod. Make sure you click that subscription button along the way. That way you will get it in your podcast feed every single day. And you get to talk about the Rams every single day. That's good news, right? Okay, so we talked about Cam Akers making the switch to number 3 earlier this offseason. He is going to be number 3. And you're thinking to yourself, well, I thought Odell Beckham was number 3 last year. He was. Now, Akers wanted to go to number 3 a year ago, but because he didn't do it in time, the NFL was going to ding him for $500,000 to do it late. And he said, you know what? I think I'll just continue to wear the other number, and then I'll go to number 3 later, and I'll keep the $500,000 in my pocket. Makes no sense, right? I can wear number 23 for 1 year longer. Now he's going back to number 3. Odell Beckham was wearing number 3. Now, when Odell came over, he'd been 13 in his previous stops. Well, John Wolford is the guy that has number 13 in his pocket. So he had to find number 3 along the way. And so because these players and their numbers are so important to them, when you see somebody take the number that the guy has, it makes you kind of go, I don't know. I wonder what that means exactly. I wonder if he's coming or going. I wonder if somebody knows something. Does Cam Akers know that Odell is not coming back, and that way he can take number 3 and not have to worry about it along the way? Maybe not. Maybe not. There was a picture that was up on Twitter of Cam Akers in his new number 3, and Adam Schefter tweeted about it and talked about how this is going to cost him $500,000. Odell Beckham Jr. Subtweeted that and says, but I would have gave him the bread. And blank that, I'm going to air Cam out. We're in negotiations for it. And he just stopped responding to me. Yeah, I'm putting on blast because he didn't want to text me back. Okay. It's funny because these are real negotiations. I mean, that's not just, we were negotiating for the number. I mean, you've heard stories. I think it was Eli Manning when he showed up for the New York Giants and he wanted to wear number 10. And there was already a player, I think it was their punter, Jeff Fiegels was number 10 at the time. And he's like, well, make me an offer and we'll see. Manning ended up building Fiegels a kitchen in his house. And any of you that ever gone through a remodel or had some sort of like a leak or a fire or something, you know how expensive it is to redo a kitchen. That's a pretty good deal for a number that you may or may not have wanted in the first place. The point being that Cam Akers just ghosted Odell in the middle of this negotiation, and that Odell is willing to joke about it and saying, hey, look, we were in the middle of negotiation and you just disappeared on me. I'm going to put you on blast. A, that's pretty funny. It's just funny because it is. And B, it means he still has a relationship with his former teammates and potential continuing teammates. And to me, it means he plans on at least, he hasn't made up his mind. Because if he was just down the street, if he was thinking I'm going to sign with any of the 31 other teams, I don't know if he's making the joke about trying to negotiate a buyout of number 3 along the way. I don't know if he's currently negotiating with John Wolford to try and get number 13 off of his back. I don't know if the NFL will allow them to do this at this point. I don't know the timeline of when you get hit with that $500,000 penalty for not giving them enough of a heads up. I would imagine it's a little bit sooner than later, but the fact that he's in the mix and joking around and talking about this number with this player and getting ghosted by this guy, and they were in the midst of negotiations, it sounds like he's still very much a part of the team culture, maybe not officially on a roster at any point. And maybe I'm reaching here a little bit because I certainly want Odell Beckham Jr. to come back to this team. What an unbelievable find he was for them last year. That could have gone 100 different ways. And then the only thing that didn't work out is that he got hurt again in the Super Bowl. But he came in, he played really well. He was a big reason they won in the playoffs. He was the best offensive player on the field in the first half of that game before he went down. I would love to have him back. Now, the good news is the Rams, because they're really smart, have set up some contingencies along the way that if it doesn't work out, they're still in a pretty good spot. But hey, look, maybe Cam Akers should return that text and say, yeah, maybe we can still continue. Even though I have it, the price has probably gone down a little bit, but we'll see. Maybe we can work something out along the way if you plan on coming back to the Rams all over again. He's got to make a decision before too long, I guess. I know he's hurt. I know he's rehabbing. I know he's trying to get right physically, but I would imagine just being a part of an organization heading into camp is something that he would want to consider, and not just trying to figure this thing out once you get into the season or very, very close to it. I would imagine a little peace of mind in that would feel pretty good, even for a guy like Odell Beckham Jr. All right, coming up tomorrow on Locked On Rams, we got a good one scheduled for you there as well. I want to talk about draft grades and what they mean exactly, because a lot of these draft grades have come in and, well, I'll tell you what I think all about him. Not much is the answer. I'll give you a little preview right there. Thanks for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single day. Now make your second listen Locked On NFL. The schedule is dark, but the NFL never stops, and neither does Locked On NFL. Get insights and opinions from hosts including Ross Jackson, Chris Carter, and Tony Wiggins, plus local Locked On NFL hosts repping all 32 squads. There's no offseason for real fans, so make sure you're subscribed to Locked On NFL on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.